My name is Patricia Morrison, and I'm 68 years old. A few months ago, I opened the safe in my bedroom, the same one my husband installed before he passed, and what I saw stopped my heart. It was empty. Every heirloom, every memory, every piece of jewelry I'd promised to pass down, gone. When I called my daughter-in-law, she didn't flinch. She looked me right in the eye and said, "Oh, don't worry, Patricia. We donated everything. You're too old for that stuff anyway." Too old. Those two words burned more than any insult ever could. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just smiled and said, "You're right, I don't need it. But you're going to need a lawyer." The look on her face was worth more than every jewel she stole. Have you ever trusted your family so deeply that betrayal didn't even cross your mind? Have you ever welcomed someone into your home, only to realize they were quietly taking pieces of your life while pretending to care? It's not strangers who cut the deepest, it's the people we love. The ones who call us Mom, who say they're helping, who speak with soft concern while slowly making us feel small, incapable, replaceable. For years, I believed kindness could fix any relationship. That patience and love would bridge every gap. But that belief was tested the day I realized my own daughter-in-law saw me not as family, but as an obstacle, something to manage, something to outlive. She thought my age made me fragile. She thought my grief made me blind. She thought she could take what was mine and silence me with guilt. What she didn't know was that I had more strength left than she could ever imagine. Stay with me, because this isn't just a story about stolen jewelry. It's a story about how one woman turned humiliation into power. It's about learning that the fight isn't over, not when your heart still beats, not when your mind still knows what's right. So before we start, I want to know, have you ever felt underestimated because of your age, your kindness, or your trust? If so, this story is for you. Subscribe to this channel and tell us where you're watching from, because today, we're going to show that age doesn't make us weak, it makes us unstoppable. So, let's begin, with the day I first realized that a smile can be the sharpest weapon a woman owns. My name is Patricia Morrison, though everyone calls me Patty. I've lived in the same Scottsdale home for 32 years. The house my late husband Gerald and I bought when our son Brandon was just 6. Every corner of that home carries his laughter, every wall holds a memory. Gerald's been gone for 4 years now. Lung cancer, swift and merciless. Even now, I sometimes reach across the bed at night, expecting to find his warmth. Grief softens over time, but it never really disappears. It just learns to sit quietly beside you. Life had settled into a steady rhythm. Mornings in my garden. Afternoons at bridge club. Evenings with old movies and tea. Peaceful, predictable, almost comforting, until the day Brandon called. "Mom," he said brightly, "Vanessa's really excited to see you." Something in his voice made me pause. That careful, polite cheerfulness people use when they're trying to keep things light. "Well, I'm excited to see her too," I said, though excitement wasn't quite the word. Vanessa and I had always been cordial, but warmth never found a permanent home between us. She was polished, beautiful, always dressed like she'd stepped out of a catalog, but there was a chill behind that perfection. That evening, they arrived at 6 sharp. Vanessa swept through the doorway in white jeans and a silk blouse that probably cost more than my grocery bill. She carried a store-bought pie as though it were an offering from a royal kitchen. "Patricia," she said, kissing both my cheeks, flooding the foyer with a wave of heavy perfume. "You look tired. Are you sleeping enough?" There it was, the first little jab, disguised as concern. "I'm sleeping fine," I replied, forcing a smile. I'd spent the afternoon trimming roses and felt more alive than I had all week. Well, at your age, sleep can be tricky, she said lightly. My mother had the same problem. Her mother was 59 and owned a yoga studio. Hardly a fair comparison. Brandon appeared behind her, wrapping me in a genuine hug. Something smells amazing. Pot roast, I said, patting his arm. Your favorite. Dinner began pleasantly enough. The roast was tender, the conversation less so. Vanessa filled every silence with talk about renovations, vacations, investments, all the things young success seems to demand. Brandon nodded, half listening while scrolling his phone. At one point, Vanessa looked around my kitchen and smiled sweetly. When was the last time you updated, Patricia? These cabinets are very vintage. I glanced at the oak cabinets Gerald had built himself. I saw his hands sanding the wood, his pride when he hung the last door. I like them, I said. Oh, I didn't mean it as criticism, she laughed, though her tone said otherwise. It's just that modern updates can raise your home's value. You might think about downsizing eventually. A house this size can be a lot for one person. That phrase, for one person, stuck to me like dust. Brandon looked uncomfortable. Mom loves this place, Vanessa. Drop it. She smiled, unbothered. Of course. I just worry about her. All alone here. What if she fell? What if something happened? That was the moment something subtle shifted. The way she said, alone, like it was a weakness instead of a choice. After they left, I stood in my kitchen surrounded by the faint smell of pot roast and perfume, feeling a thin thread of unease wind through my chest. I told myself I was imagining it. But deep down, I knew better. The next few weeks, Vanessa's visits multiplied. Always unannounced, always under the guise of helping. I brought groceries, she'd say, setting down bags before I could protest. I reorganized your pantry, those old cans were a health risk. I replaced your bath mat, it was a slip hazard. Each act came wrapped in kindness, but every improvement made my home feel less like mine. One afternoon, she moved a lamp and 2 rugs. You could trip, she explained. Safety first. Safety, apparently, meant erasing my comfort. Brandon watched her fuss over me with a faint smile. He saw devotion where I saw intrusion. Every time I tried to speak up, I sounded ungrateful. Every protest painted me as stubborn. The pattern was clever, too clever to be coincidence. One evening, while she was rearranging my kitchen drawers, she said casually, Patricia, have you thought about hiring a cleaner? You shouldn't strain yourself with arthritis. My arthritis isn't that bad, I replied. She tilted her head, sympathetic but dismissive. You're sweet. But you don't notice decline until it's already there. I'll find someone for you. She didn't ask, she decided. When the cleaner arrived the next week, I realized Vanessa wasn't simply helping, she was taking charge. My routines shifted around strangers. My independence shrank, one polite suggestion at a time. The worst part wasn't the changes. It was the doubt. I began second-guessing myself. Had we really talked about hiring help before? Was I forgetting things? That whisper of uncertainty grew louder each day. By the time I caught her in my bedroom, standing over my open jewelry box, I wasn't even surprised, just tired. It was a Tuesday afternoon in June, sunlight slipping through my curtains, warm and harmless. I'd just come home from bridge club, humming to myself as I set down my purse. From upstairs came the faint sound of movement. At first, I thought maybe the cleaner had come early. But as I climbed the stairs, my heartbeat quickened. The cleaner never came on Tuesdays. I turned the corner into my bedroom. There she was. Vanessa. Not near my bedroom, in it. Standing by my dresser. Vanessa? My voice shook. What are you doing here? She turned smoothly, her face calm, almost practiced. Oh, Patricia. You scared me. Brandon gave me his key months ago, remember? He asked me to check on you when he's out of town. I didn't remember that. But lately, she'd made me question my memory so often that doubt slid in before logic could. I was just looking at your lovely jewelry, she said, glancing down. My jewelry box was open. My mother's pearls. My grandmother's ruby ring. The bracelet Gerald gave me for our 25th anniversary. All laid out on the dresser like a display. They're private, I said quietly. Of course. I was only admiring them. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. But you really should keep them safe. A woman living alone, at your age, you're vulnerable. Thieves target homes like this. My stomach turned. They're fine where they are. Her gaze lingered on that jewelry box before she closed it delicately, like a cat pretending disinterest after spotting a bird. That night, I couldn't sleep. Gerald's voice echoed in my mind, trust your gut, Patty, it's never steered you wrong. So at 2 a.m, I got up, tiptoed to the closet, and moved my most precious pieces into the safe, the one only Brandon and I knew the combination to. My fingers hesitated over the numbers, his birthday, then mine, then our wedding date. When I closed that door, I told myself I could rest easy. I wanted to believe it. The next few months felt like living inside a quiet storm. Vanessa's visits continued, each one another step deeper into my life. She hired a gardener, for my safety. She replaced my mail key, so I wouldn't lose it. She even called my doctor, claiming to be updating emergency contacts. Every gesture looked generous from the outside. But each one stripped a little more of my control. Brandon didn't see it. He thought she was being kind. And maybe part of me wanted to believe that too, that she was just clumsy with affection, not calculating. But when she began hinting about my memory lapses, the illusion cracked completely. She'd say, we talked about this last week, Patricia, with that patronizing smile, as if testing me. I'd insist we hadn't. She'd sigh softly, tilt her head, and whisper, it's okay. It happens. It happens. 2 words that made me feel like I was fading. By September, I was questioning everything I did, the stove, the locks, even my own recollections. That's when the heart incident happened. It wasn't a full heart attack, just a sharp pain that sent me to the hospital for 3 days. Enough to frighten Brandon. Enough to give Vanessa exactly what she wanted, proof that I was failing. When I came home, she was waiting at the door with flowers and sympathy. Oh, Patricia, don't worry about anything. I'll take care of everything, she said, fluffing pillows and adjusting curtains as though the house now belonged to her. For a while, I let her. The medication dulled my energy, and part of me was simply grateful not to be alone. She brought tea, handled calls, and watched old movies with me. For a moment, I almost believed her care was genuine. But one afternoon, I caught a flicker in her eyes, a glimmer of satisfaction she couldn't quite hide when she thought I wasn't looking. Not compassion. Triumph. That single expression told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't care. It was a conquest. She wasn't helping me recover. She was moving in, inch by inch, replacing my independence with her authority. And though I looked frail on the outside, something inside me began to sharpen again. I started watching her closely, the way she handled my mail, the way she answered calls meant for me, the way she used Brandon's name whenever she wanted to justify something. Each day, I grew quieter, but not weaker. I let her think I was grateful. I smiled when she hovered, nodded when she organized. Because if she thought I was finished, she'd make a mistake. She'd push too far. And when she did, I'd be ready. Recovery is supposed to bring peace, but mine brought visitors. Every morning, Vanessa arrived uninvited, her tone bright and cheerful, her perfume filling every corner of the house. She came armed with lists, medications, appointments, meals, all color-coded and taped neatly to the fridge. At first, I thought she meant well. My body needed rest, my heart still stuttered from time to time. But as I watched her glide from room to room, rearranging drawers, writing notes, answering calls meant for me, something deep inside whispered that this wasn't kindness. It was control. Still, I played along. The doctor said stress was my enemy. So I smiled, thanked her for the soup, and let her believe I was surrendering. Until one afternoon, I heard her voice downstairs. She wasn't alone. A man's voice joined hers, calm, professional. I rose slowly, pain pressing against my chest, and gripped the railing as I descended. In the living room stood Vanessa and a man in a tailored suit, both studying my furniture and artwork. He was taking photos. "Vanessa," I said, my voice thin. "Who is this?" She turned, startled but quick to recover. "Patricia. You're awake. This is David Richter, a real estate appraiser. I just wanted to get an idea of your home's value." "Nothing formal." "Why would you need that?" She smiled, soft and pitying. "We were just talking about possibilities, assisted living, maybe something smaller. You've been through so much lately. Brandon and I just want what's best." "I never agreed to sell my home," I said quietly. The appraiser cleared his throat. "I'll come back another time." He left quickly, sensing the tension. After the door closed, Vanessa folded her arms. "Patricia, please don't overreact. I'm only being proactive. You can't manage this house forever. You should be thinking ahead." "I'll think for myself." Her lips tightened. "Brandon worries." "I worry. You should let us help." "By appraising my home behind my back?" "By being practical." Her voice was smooth as silk but cold. "You can't live in denial, Patricia." "You're not," she stopped herself, but I heard it anyway. "You're not capable." When she left that afternoon, I stood alone in the living room and felt the last threads of trust snap. I'd tolerated her interference because I loved my son. I'd forgiven her arrogance because I believed family deserved grace. But this wasn't interference anymore. It was takeover. That night, I couldn't shake the unease. I moved through the quiet house, checking doors, windows, and lights. My heart still raced from anger. Finally, I went upstairs and opened the closet. I just needed reassurance, proof that something, at least, was still mine. I pulled the coats aside, revealed the safe's hidden panel, and entered the familiar combination. The lock clicked open. I reached for the handle, half distracted by the echo of Gerald's voice in my memory. When the door swung wide, the breath left my lungs. Empty. Not a single item remained. The pearls, the ruby ring, the bracelet Gerald gave me, gone. The antique brooches passed down through generations, gone. Every heirloom, every link to the women before me, vanished. For a long moment, I couldn't move. I stood frozen, staring into that hollow box, my hand trembling against the steel. It wasn't just jewelry that had been taken, it was history. My mother's wedding pearls. My grandmother's ring, pressed into my palm on her deathbed. The bracelet Gerald had saved for months to buy. Each one had carried love, memory, and continuity. Now, nothing but air. The world dimmed around me. I felt as though someone had carved out a piece of my heart and locked it away. I don't know how long I stood there before instinct took over. I turned toward the door, ready to call the police, ready to call Brandon, but before I could reach the stairs, the front door opened. Her voice floated up. Patricia. I brought groceries. Groceries. Vanessa appeared in the kitchen doorway, holding paper bags filled with organic produce. She smiled, radiant and casual, until she saw my face. Patricia, what's wrong? You look awful. Should I call your doctor? My jewelry, I said, barely recognizing my own voice. It's gone. She blinked, feigning confusion. Gone? What do you mean? The safe. It's empty. She set down the bags slowly. You're sure? Maybe you misplaced. Don't lie to me. Something flickered in her eyes, a tiny, involuntary reaction she couldn't hide quickly enough. Patricia, she began, steadying her tone, let's not jump to conclusions. We can call the police, of course, but there was no break-in. No damage to the safe. Then someone must have. Only 2 people know that combination, I said. Me and Brandon. A long silence filled the kitchen. She exhaled softly. Fine. I'll tell you the truth. My hands tightened on the counter. Vanessa folded her arms, her smile thinning. We donated them, she said simply. I stared at her, certain I'd misheard. You what? The jewelry, she repeated, her voice maddeningly calm. Brandon and I agreed it was time. They were collecting dust, and there are people who actually need help. We made the donation in your name. It was the right thing to do. The room tilted. You had no right. Actually, we did. She stepped closer, her tone soft but smug. After your heart scare, Brandon signed the power of attorney forms. He wanted to be sure you were protected. That means we can make financial decisions on your behalf. My pulse was hammered. Those weren't finances, Vanessa. Those were my mother's pearls. My grandmother's ring. My husband's bracelet. They were my life. She lifted one shoulder. You're too old for that sort of thing anyway. When would you wear diamonds now? To the bridge club? Too old. Again. The same dagger, twisted a little deeper. She went on, unbothered. You should be grateful. Your name will be attached to a generous contribution. People will admire that legacy. A strange calm spread through me. The tremor in my hands vanished. I'd spent months being managed, pitted, second-guessed. Not anymore. You're right, I said quietly. I don't need them. Relief flickered across her face, too soon. But you're going to need a lawyer. Her jaw dropped. Excuse me? What you've done is theft, I said evenly. Grand theft. Fraud. Elder abuse. All of it carries real prison time in Arizona. She blinked, then forced a laugh. You can't prove anything. Brandon gave me access. Access to my house, I said. Not my safe. And power of attorney doesn't grant you the right to strip family heirlooms and sell them under the guise of charity. Her cheeks flushed. You don't know what you're talking about. Then stay, I said. Let's call Brandon right now. You can explain to him where my jewelry went and show him the receipts from this donation. I'm sure he'll be thrilled. She froze. A muscle twitched at her temple. Patricia, you're being dramatic. You've been under a lot of stress. I've been under your control, I snapped. But that ends today. Get out of my house. She hesitated, torn between arrogance and fear. Brandon will believe me over you. Then let's test that, I said, picking up my phone. Her confidence cracked. She backed toward the door, eyes darting like a trapped animal. This isn't over, she hissed. No, I said. It's not. But you're going to wish it was. She fled, slamming the door behind her. The sound echoed through the house like a gunshot. For a long moment, I stood perfectly still. Then I called 3 numbers. First call, Brandon. Straight to voicemail. Son, call me back immediately. It's urgent, your wife and my jewelry. Second call, the Scottsdale Police Department's non-emergency line. I gave them everything, the inventory, the combination, the timeline. The officer's calm professionalism steadied me. A report was filed. Third call, Amanda Reeves, an old friend and one of the toughest attorneys I'd ever known. We'd worked together when I owned the gallery years ago. She'd retired, but I knew she still took cases that interested her. Amanda, it's Patty Morrison, I said when she answered. I need someone who understands estate law, fraud, and manipulation. And I need someone who isn't afraid to fight. A short laugh came through the line. You always did call me when things got interesting. Tell me everything. By the time we hung up, a sense of strength filled the space that fear had occupied only an hour earlier. I walked through my kitchen, the same kitchen Vanessa had mocked for being outdated, and touched the oak cabinets Gerald had built. They were still solid. So was I. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. They thought age made me fragile. They thought grief made me blind. They thought they could strip me of everything and leave me quiet. But I'd buried a husband, raised a son, and built a business from nothing. I wasn't fragile, I was forged. I poured myself a glass of water, sat at the table, and waited for the phone to ring. From this point forward, everything would change. Vanessa believed she'd taken control of my life. What she'd really done was hand me a reason to fight harder than I ever had. Because once you've lost the things you treasure most, the fear of losing anything else disappears, and that's when a woman becomes unstoppable. If you were standing in Patricia's shoes, how would you respond? Would you stay silent or fight back? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a story where justice finds its way home. That night, I sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker against the desert sky. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid of the dark. Because I knew what was coming next. And it wasn't mercy. Brandon called back close to midnight. His voice shook with panic. Mom? What's going on? You sounded terrified. Are you okay? I'm fine, I said steadily. But we need to talk about your wife and my jewelry. A pause. Then, softly, what about it? It's gone. Every piece. Vanessa said you both agreed to donate them because I didn't need them anymore. Silence. Just breathing on the other end. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked. Mom, I never said that. I didn't agree to anything. What donation? She told me you'd signed power of attorney papers. That you gave her permission. I signed medical forms, he said, voice rising. At the hospital. She said they were just in case of emergencies, nothing about finances. The truth hit him mid-sentence. His breath caught. She tricked me. Oh my God, she tricked me. I swallowed hard. Brandon, come home. Tonight. Don't tell her you're coming. He didn't argue. I'll be there by morning. After the call, I sat in silence. For the first time, I wasn't angry, I was resolved. This wasn't just about me anymore. My son was a victim too. By sunrise, I heard tires crunching on the driveway. Brandon looked exhausted, his eyes red, his shirt still wrinkled from travel. He hugged me so tightly I could feel his guilt pressing through his chest. I'm so sorry, Mom, he said. I thought she loved us. I thought she was helping. She knew exactly how to make you believe that, I said softly. But she underestimated us. A knock at the door interrupted us. Amanda Reeves stood there, silver hair, sharp eyes, and the confidence of a woman who never forgot a fight she'd won. Well, she said, stepping inside without hesitation, let's get to work. Brandon blinked. You really called in a lawyer? Not just a lawyer, Amanda replied. An old friend who's allergic to injustice. We gathered around the kitchen table. I handed Amanda the police report, a handwritten inventory of what was missing, and a printed list of every time Vanessa had entered the house in the past year. She scanned quickly, her brow furrowing. This is a pattern. Isolation, control, property transfer, classic financial abuse tactics. The good news? She's been sloppy. We'll find proof. Her confidence steadied me. Where do we start? I asked. With the money, Amanda said. If she sold those pieces, there's a paper trail. Jewelry buyers, pawn shops, private brokers, they all keep records. And if she really made a donation, we'll find a receipt. Fraud leaves footprints. Brandon leaned forward. I gave her the safe combination months ago. She said she wanted to get things appraised for insurance. Amanda nodded grimly. There it is, consent under false pretenses. We'll use that. And the power of attorney form she made you sign? I guarantee it was altered. She pulled out her phone, calling in favors like a general assembling troops. Within minutes, she had an investigator, an insurance contact, and an estate clerk on standby. Watching her work was like watching order rise out of chaos. Hours passed, each minute sharpening my focus. Every document Amanda reviewed added another piece to the puzzle. Finally, she looked up. Patty, you've got a strong case. Theft, fraud, elder exploitation, the works. But we'll need confirmation that your jewelry was sold. How long will that take? Not long, she said. People who think they're smarter than everyone else rarely cover their tracks as well as they think. Brandon exhaled, rubbing his temples. She has no idea I know. Should I go home? Not yet, Amanda warned. Let her think you're still on her side. We'll use that. He looked uneasy. You're asking me to lie to her? I'm asking you to protect yourself, she said. You've seen what she's capable of. He nodded slowly. I'll do whatever it takes. That evening, the three of us sat in my living room, the same space where Vanessa had brought an appraiser just days before. Now, it felt like a war room. Amanda outlined our next steps on a notepad. 1. Confirm sale of jewelry. 2. Verify altered documents. 3. Collect witness statements. And 4. Secure police cooperation. When she finished, she looked up and smiled faintly. You may have lost your jewelry, Patty, but you're about to gain something more valuable, justice. I looked at the list, then at my son. We'll get through this. Together. Brandon's eyes welled. You shouldn't have to fight this hard at your age. Maybe not, I said. But if I don't, who will? The strength in my voice surprised both of us. Amanda grinned. That's the spirit. Let's ruin this woman properly. Amanda's team worked faster than I thought possible. Within 3 days, she had a file thicker than any courtroom binder I'd ever seen. She laid it on the kitchen table with a quiet satisfaction. Your daughter-in-law is a professional thief, she said. But not a smart one. Brandon leaned forward, his jaw tight. What did you find? Amanda flipped open the folder. First, the jewelry. She sold it to a private buyer in Phoenix. Marcus Webb, owner of a boutique appraisal firm. He confirmed the transaction himself. He even gave me the receipts. She slid one across the table. My hands trembled as I saw the list: my mother's pearls, my grandmother's ring, Gerald's bracelet, the sapphire earrings. All of it priced and sold. She sold everything for quick cash, Amanda continued. Less than half the actual value. The payments went directly into her personal account, not the joint account she shares with Brandon. My throat tightened. She didn't donate anything. No, Amanda said. She stole and profited. Classic greed. Brandon covered his face with both hands. I gave her the combination. I told her the date myself. I reached across the table and touched his wrist. You trusted your wife. That isn't a crime. What she did with that trust is. Amanda nodded. And it's about to destroy her. She turned a few pages and produced another document, a copy of the power of attorney form. You were right, Brandon. She altered it. The original medical form had 3 pages. The one filed after your mother's hospital stay has 7. How? She added pages: financial control, property rights, asset management, everything she'd need to legally drain accounts or sell property. Amanda tapped the paper. The signature page is the same, but the additional pages were printed later. The ink analysis already shows a mismatch. I stared at the papers. She planned this from the start. Probably, Amanda said. And there's more. This isn't her first time. Brandon looked up sharply. What do you mean? Amanda's smile turned thin and cold. I ran her background. Vanessa Parker used to be Vanessa Richards, and before that, Vanessa Chin. 2 prior marriages, both to wealthy men, both ending in suspicious divorces. Brandon's face went pale. She told me she was married once, for 6 months. Amanda shook her head. Try twice, for 2 years each. Her first husband in San Diego claimed she stole a rare coin collection. The second, a widower in Tucson, accused her of taking his late wife's jewelry. Both cases settled privately. Both men refused to press charges because they were embarrassed. She's been doing this for years, I said. Amanda nodded. It's her pattern: find someone with money, gain sympathy, take control, extract everything she can, then move on. Brandon stood abruptly and walked to the window. I let her into my life. I gave her everything she wanted. She chose deceit, I said gently. You chose love. They're not the same. Amanda began packing the documents into her briefcase. We have everything we need to go to the police and the bank. But before we do, we need her to confirm something, in her own words. Brandon turned back, wary. You want me to record her? Not necessarily, Amanda said. But you'll see her. Pretend nothing's wrong. Let her talk. If she slips up, we'll have what we need. The thought made him uneasy. I can't look at her the same way. You won't have to for long, Amanda said. Just one conversation. He nodded reluctantly. Fine. I'll do it. That evening, Brandon went home. I waited, my nerves coiled tight as wire. Hours later, my phone buzzed with a text. Brandon, she's nervous. I told her mom's resting. She thinks we made up. She's talking a lot. Another message followed 20 minutes later. Brandon, she's bragging. Said she handled things like an adult and that the donation was for our future. She slipped. I have it on my phone. Amanda smiled when she saw the message. That's it. We've got her admitting control over your assets and referencing the sale indirectly. She's done. The next morning, Amanda made 2 calls, one to the police, the other to the jewelry buyer, Marcus Webb. Webb was cooperative. She told me the pieces were hers, he said over the speakerphone. If I'd known they were stolen, I never would have touched them. I still have some of the jewelry in my vault. The rest was sold to a collector, but I can help track it. By noon, an officer from Scottsdale PD met us at my house to collect the evidence. Amanda provided the file, the recordings, and the document analysis. The officer took notes and promised a swift follow-up. When he left, Amanda sat back and crossed her arms. Now we wait. But not for long. Brandon exhaled, exhausted. Do we tell her? Amanda's eyes gleamed. Not yet. The police will do that for us. 2 days later, the phone rang again. Brandon's voice was calm but tense. She's home. They called her in for questioning, and she's furious. She says she's coming here to clear the air. Good, Amanda said. Let her come. When Vanessa arrived, she looked nothing like the immaculate woman who used to glide through my kitchen. Her eyes were hard, her hair unkempt, her tone defensive. I don't know what story you've told the police, she said sharply, but you've made a huge mistake. I stood my ground. You made it for me. Brandon stepped into view from the hallway. She froze. You're here? He didn't speak. He just looked at her, not with love, not with anger, but with finality. Amanda rose from the sofa. Vanessa Parker, I suggest you sit. You'll want to hear this. Vanessa's expression shifted from arrogance to fear as Amanda opened the folder and began reading aloud, the fraudulent power of attorney, the sale receipts, the testimony from her ex-husbands, the statement from Marcus Webb. By the time Amanda finished, the color had drained from Vanessa's face. You think you can prove anything? She whispered. Amanda smiled faintly. We already have. At that moment, the knock came at the door. The same officer who'd visited earlier stepped inside with 2 others. Mrs. Parker, you're under arrest for grand theft, fraud, and financial exploitation. Vanessa's eyes darted wildly. Brandon, please. Tell them. But he said nothing. As the officers led her out, her voice echoed down the hall, sharp and hollow. You'll regret this, Patricia. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The moment the door closed, silence filled the house, the first real silence in months. Amanda gathered her notes. That's the sound of victory beginning, Patty. I sank into a chair, the weight of relief pressing into my shoulders. No, I said softly. That's the sound of peace. The next morning, the news broke. Local woman arrested for defrauding elderly mother-in-law. The headline spread faster than wildfire through the community. Neighbors who once waved politely now whispered at the grocery store. Some avoided eye contact, while others stopped me to say, "Good for you, Patricia, about time someone stood up for themselves." I didn't care for gossip, but I couldn't deny the strange satisfaction that came from truth finally being public. For months, I'd been made to doubt my memory. Now the world knew who had really been lying. The courthouse smelled faintly of paper and coffee. Amanda met me on the steps, her silver hair pinned neatly, her briefcase tucked under her arm like a weapon. Brandon joined us moments later, his expression heavy but calm. Inside, the hearing began. The prosecutor outlined the charges: theft, fraud, and the misuse of a legal document for financial gain. Each count felt like a small piece of justice taking form. Vanessa sat at the defense table in a charcoal suit, her beauty polished but her posture brittle. She didn't look at me, not once. When the clerk read the charges aloud, her voice shook for the first time. "How do you plead?" Vanessa's attorney whispered something, but Vanessa spoke over him. "Not guilty." Amanda leaned toward me and murmured, "They always start brave." The judge, a stern woman with kind eyes, turned to the defense. "Considering the evidence, bail is set at $50,000. Surrender your passport and refrain from contact with the victim or her family." As the gavel struck, Vanessa's composure fractured. She looked at Brandon, pleading silently, but he kept his gaze fixed on the floor. I felt no triumph, just release. Outside, reporters waited. Microphones, cameras, flashing lights. One of them asked, "Mrs. Morrison, how does it feel seeing justice begin?" I paused. "It feels like breathing after holding your breath for too long." Amanda nodded approvingly beside me. That's a headline by itself. Over the following weeks, the case grew. The jewelry buyer testified, the altered documents were authenticated, and both of Vanessa's ex-husbands provided statements describing the same pattern of deception. Each new piece of evidence was a brick in the wall that separated the woman I used to trust from the criminal she'd become. Still, the emotional toll was heavy. I'd loved my son's wife. I'd let her into my home, my family, my trust. And yet, sitting in that courtroom, I realized something vital. Forgiveness doesn't mean allowing someone to continue hurting you. One afternoon during a break, Brandon sat beside me on the courthouse bench. His eyes were distant. "Mom, I don't know how to face people," he said quietly. "I brought her into our lives. Everyone knows it." "You don't need to explain," I told him. "She fooled us both. The difference is, we learned." He nodded, his voice unsteady. "I'll never forget what she did, but I'll make sure no one ever does this to you again." Amanda joined us, holding a new document. The court just froze her assets. She won't be spending a dime until the trial ends. And the jewelry buyer is returning what he still has. You'll get some of your pieces back. Tears stung my eyes. Some. Half, Amanda said gently. The rest were sold overseas. But I'll chase those too. For now, take this as a victory. That night, I sat in my living room surrounded by quiet. On the table lay the pearl necklace and ruby ring, the ones Marcus Webb had returned. I lifted the pearls and felt their familiar weight against my palm. For a moment, I was back in my wedding gown, Gerald's hand warm in mine. "Still with me, love," I whispered. The ring sparkled faintly under the lamp. I placed it on my finger, feeling both grief and gratitude in equal measure. The phone buzzed. A message from Amanda. Tomorrow's hearing will likely end with a plea deal. Get some rest, you've earned it. I smiled at the words earned it. For months, I had lived under someone else's control. Now, every decision was mine again. Even small things, choosing dinner, turning off the lights, locking my doors, felt like acts of freedom. The next morning, I arrived at court early. The sky was pale gold, the air cool. Brandon walked beside me, quieter than usual. When we entered, Vanessa was already seated, hands clasped tightly, her lawyer whispering furiously. The judge entered. "Miss Parker, have you reconsidered your plea?" Vanessa hesitated, then said, barely audible, "Guilty." The sound rippled through the courtroom. I closed my eyes, exhaling a weight I'd carried for too long. The judge reviewed the plea agreement, restitution, probation, community service, and public apology. A light sentence for what she'd done, but I didn't need vengeance, I needed acknowledgement. When it was over, Vanessa stood. Her eyes met mine for the first time since that day in the kitchen. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I studied her for a moment. "I hope you mean that someday." She looked away as the bailiff led her out. Amanda turned toward me. "That's the end of her story, Patty. What happens next is yours." I nodded slowly. "Mine," I repeated. Outside the courthouse, Brandon wrapped his arm around me. "Let's go home." Weeks passed after the final hearing. The house felt lighter, not because it was free of her presence, but because it was mine again. The mornings became sacred. I'd open the curtains, let the sun warm the hardwood floors, and brew coffee the way Gerald liked it, 2 scoops, 1 sugar. The silence that once felt heavy now felt earned. Brandon visited often. He mowed the lawn, fixed the gate, and stayed for dinner like he used to when he was young. But more than chores or conversation, it was the peace between us that mattered most. One afternoon, he brought a small box. "Something for you," he said, setting it gently on the table. Inside was a bracelet, simple silver, engraved with the words, "Strength doesn't retire." I laughed softly, running my fingers over the inscription. "That's beautiful." "It's true," he said. "You showed me that." The words struck deeper than he knew. For months, I'd felt invisible, a background figure in my own story. But as I sat there with my son, I realized something. Growing older doesn't mean fading. It means carrying the lessons that others haven't yet learned. Amanda called later that week with one final update. "Patty, the restitution payments have started. The recovered jewelry is in your safety deposit box at the bank. You'll get the remaining pieces back in time." "I'm not sure I even want them anymore," I admitted. "Then sell them yourself," she said with a chuckle. "But on your terms this time." We shared a quiet laugh. "Amanda?" I added. "Thank you. You didn't just help me win a case. You helped me remember who I was." "That's what friends do," she said warmly. After we hung up, I sat by the window, looking out at the garden Gerald once tended. The roses were in bloom again, stubborn, resilient things. I smiled, realizing how much we had in common. That evening, Brandon and I visited the community center for a seniors gathering. I hadn't attended in months, but word of the trial had spread, and when I walked in, a small applause broke out. "Patty," someone called. "We saw you on the news. You're famous." I laughed. "I'm just lucky to still have my good sense." A woman beside me whispered, "You're an inspiration." So many of us let our families control everything when we get older. You showed it's never too late to stand up. Her words stayed with me all night. Later, as I drove home, I thought about the women like her, the ones who stay silent, afraid of being called difficult or ungrateful. I thought about how easily kindness can be mistaken for weakness. But not anymore. Not in my world. A few weeks later, I decided to write something, not for the court, not for the news, but for myself. I opened an old notebook and began. They said I didn't need my jewels. But what they never understood was that the real treasure wasn't gold or pearls, it was memory, self-respect, and the courage to start again. As I wrote, I felt Gerald's spirit nearby, steady, proud. When I finished, I placed the notebook on the same shelf where his photo stood. For once, I didn't cry. The final touch came quietly, like all meaningful things do. A letter arrived in the mail a month later, from Vanessa. Her handwriting was neat, almost too careful. Patricia. There isn't much to say that will fix what I've done. Prison humbles you in ways I can't describe. I've spent every day thinking about how I justified my choices. You were right, I didn't need the jewels. I needed to learn what they represented. I'm sorry. I hope someday you can forgive me. I sat with that letter for a long time. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's understanding where pain ends and healing begins. I didn't reply. Not out of anger, out of peace. Sometimes silence is the most powerful answer there is. A month later, Amanda visited one last time. She stood in the garden, admiring the roses. You did it, Patty. You came out stronger. I smiled. No. We did it. I just remembered how to fight. Amanda chuckled. You think you'll ever tell this story publicly? I thought for a moment. Maybe. But not for revenge. For lessons. People need to know that dignity doesn't come with an expiration date. That night, I sat on the porch, the desert wind brushing against my hair. I looked at the stars and whispered a quiet thank you, to life, to endurance, to every scar that taught me resilience. They said I didn't need her jewels. They said age meant weakness. But they forgot, wisdom shines brighter than diamonds. If you've ever been underestimated, if someone's ever tried to take your peace or your worth, let this story remind you, you're stronger than they think. Don't forget to subscribe for more true life dramas that remind us all, respect, once lost, always finds its way home. And share this story with someone who needs to be reminded, you can be kind, and still win.